The following program is sponsored by John Chachis Insurance, your local farmers insurance agent located at 800 Avenue G in Ely, and brought to you as a public service by Ely TV, Channel 3-2 in Ely, Nevada. Ely City Municipal Utility Board meeting, April 28, 2014.
Working session, April 28, 2014. Roll call, please.
Chairman Norcross.
Here.
Member O'Flaherty.
Here.
Member Robison. Clerk Treasurer Winkle. Public Works Director Jenkins.
Here.
That's all, Chairman.
Okay. At this time, we'll ask for public comment. Morning, George.
Chairman, how are you? Nice to see you back. Mr. Chairman, in reading City Code Chapter 6, Section 16F-7, it states that if any person interferes with the city engineer, such a person so offended shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor. Has the Ely Utility Board or the city ever filed misdemeanor charges against Mr. Keith Carson or any other individual for his or their action regarding the sewer line project contemplated in Central Ely?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, that project has been put on hold, and we need to rectify that situation. Either you have rules and regulations or you don't. One person or one entity should not hold up the whole city.
I think they're going through the legal system on that. That's why hasn't even been on none of the agendas lately.
Well,
we're not at liberty to speak on this because it is under litigation, George.
All they have to do is say we're working on it. That's all. I'm not hearing anything. Mr. Chairman, I'm getting requesting a list of those that have applied to fill their water tanks or tankers using city water. I want to know if Mr. Allworth is on the list with his business Scott Water. I want to know if he has ever paid deposit. Was he issued the city meter? In August 7, 2013, I reported he was seen filling his water truck at the BLM complex. Did the BLM bill him for that water, or did the BLM pay for it? Does the BLM have a city-issued meter? And have they paid the deposit fees for city policy? Were there any late fees, penalties, and or interest paid by either one of those entities? Mr. Chairman, you to date have not addressed as to why you're charging me commercial rates for my home when I'm not in business. I'm again requesting that your response in writing or the basis for your refusal. I'm again requesting a copy of State Senator Pete Gobichia's landfill billing, which he stated at a county commission meeting this last year was approximately $500 or more without penalties and or interest. I want to know if Mr. Bath has paid his connection fees for his home on the hillside. I want to know if Mr. Christiansen has ever paid for the extension obligation that he had done. Were any of these people assessed late fees, penalties, and or interest? Mr. Chairman, do you have any type of report that informs you of those having any outstanding accounts with the city, water, sewer, landfill? If not, why not? How can you do your job without knowing what's going on? If you do have a copy, I'd like to have one. I've not seen one in the years that I've been attending. Mr. Chairman, do you have an updated list of home occupation special use permits? I want to see if Mr. Allworth is on there. I've checked the city planning commission, he's not on there. I go to the planning commission at the county, he's not on there. I recently found where he parks his truck in that particular property is not zoned commercially. Do you have any of that information at all, Mr. Chairman?
All right, Coach, thank you very much. Is there any other public comment? Mr. Sears, good to see you.
Good morning. Monday is court day for me, so
Okay.
I'm not going to be here long.
All right. I do have a question for you before you leave. But,
Yes, sir.
With that being said, there are items for discussion action, possible action of the utility board, new business, board members' discussion, possible action, review of the city of Ely landfill billing structures and procedures. Anybody know what this is about? I'm in the dark.
It was put on the agenda last meeting where they were questioning the
the landfill fees for the commercial businesses. Because there's commercial businesses that are working order and they get charged like closed fees. And versus ones that businesses close, they get charged, they never got moved to a closed fee. And the way that the structure is of figuring the amounts for all commercial businesses on landfills, basically. And it was requested by the last council, well, you weren't here, Kevin and John, that we call around and see how they do their procedures to try to get an idea of what we can do about it.
Right. And I seen Julie Spear sent out a letter to Pershing County and the city of Alpine.
Correct.
That's the two
And we got City of
pieces
Wells.
of information we have in our packet. And the city of Wells, right?
Yeah, and we have Wells also.
Yes, the city of Wells. Okay, what's the question is, I assume, is we're charging too much for commercial businesses, or?
I don't think that, I don't know if we're, I don't know. I can't really answer that. But all I know is that going into the system and when I was researching it, I figured out how they came up with the amounts. But there was no hard documentation of how, like, we don't use a process to put in the commercial business files, basically. But looking at the amounts, we were able to figure out some of them, how they came up with the amounts. And some of them, we couldn't figure out how they came up with the amounts because what it should be versus what they're being billed was a completely different amount.
I think what we're trying to do is go back and make sure that the rates we are charging the landfill are fair and equitable to everyone, whether they're low or high. It hasn't been reviewed that I can see since 2009. So we're trying to come up with either a formula or some equitable way that we can go back and review these rates occasionally and make sure everything is free fair and competitive.
Right.
And that's kind of where we're supposed to be.
And as I see here, this is a working session agenda. And Mr. Sheriff, the question I have with you is, we probably can't raise rates or, say we want to raise a rate on one individual without going through the public hearing process. My understanding is in past meetings we've had where we went to raise the rates, we always have had to have a public meeting with the public at the convention center.
I think the goal of this meeting was not to do that. The goal of this meeting is to review the procedures that you've historically used to establish your commercial rates. See if they're fair, okay, as an initial matter. So you would charge one kind of business a particular amount of money. You would charge another business similarly situated the same amount of money. Are those rates reasonably related to either your cost to run the commercial side of the landfill? Are they reasonably related to the amount of trash that the particular business generates? And one of the items of discussion that came up earlier was whether or not all markets, for example, that have delis, type restaurants, were being charged not just according to the market rate. Are they also being charged for the restaurant side of the business or any other special services that they may offer as part of the market? And that was one of the issues that came up in the earlier meeting because we noticed that some weren't. And so when the landfill rates were originally established, what happened was they determined the overall cost to run the landfill. Okay? They determined a reasonable residential rate, and then after they established a reasonable residential rate, they decided to charge the commercial businesses in a fashion that would meet the costs that were left over that were not covered by the residences. And the first question is that a reasonable way to go? It certainly seems like one. But you need to make that determination today and probably look at what your total commercial side would be, given that you reduce out what you're charging for residences. You'll have a number for your total commercial side. And then the question is, do you have a reasonable way to break that up with sufficient detail among all the different kinds of commercial operations that are done in the city, whether it be home occupation, markets, restaurants, bars, lawyers' offices, every kind of retail shop you've got in town. And I think what you need to think about, because you're all in businesses of various types, how do we split that up? I think that's what the goal is for today. Not necessarily to raise, although you certainly can discuss raising rates in order to, on one side as opposed to another side. But the basic goal of today is to come up with a rational judgment about how you're going to do this. Okay? So that whatever you come up with is reasonably related to the cost, not just to operate the landfill, but to prepare for landfill closure. Daniel?
Thank you very much. It's a lot clearer, I believe, for everybody here. Thanks. Chairman, the agenda states, I see we have everything here a little bit on this one sheet. It's just strictly landfill billing structure and procedures. The water, sewer is not that.
Well, I have a couple of questions, if I can. Okay. Jennifer, do we have a budget that the landfill's working on? Or what the landfill generates?
Yeah,
As far as
we have a working budget. We just met with the budget session on Friday.
Okay.
And we got to make some changes to it.
Okay.
Well,
Do we
more money or less money or?
We kept it about the same. I mean,
what revenues do we generate at the landfill?
I think it's like,
You have residential, commercial.
I want to say it's about 1 million.
In follow-up to Member O'Flaherty's question, does our revenues cover our costs?
Yes.
And what, as far as an actuarial, what are we projecting as closure costs? Do we have any projection at all for that?
Right now we don't. I'm working on that right now to try to come up with some answers to
There's
it.
supposed to be a fund that's strictly for closure.
Restricted fund.
Yeah.
Right now we have like $985,000 in there.
How much?
985,000. In the past 3 years, starting with FY12, they were putting in about $84,000 a year in it, and for some reason the budget this fiscal year, or I'm sorry, FY13, the FY14 budget, they only budgeted for $51,000 to put into the landfill closure. So I'm trying to gather that information as to why they lowered it versus leaving it like the same. And I think it's because their expectancy of the landfill is a lot greater than what they were thinking.
That's exactly.
It's gone between, in the past 30 years, 40 years, just the aerial photos and the calculations they do. So right now we're going every 5 years. We're doing an aerial photo, so you can go 5 years of the same amount. 5 years later, it could change. It could go up, it could go down.
And I think that's a proven process. I think you've got an estimated life of the facility, and I think if you have a projected closure cost, whatever that reclamation take, and then you divide that out with the the amount of time. Obviously, we have to use net present value in the time of money that it would escalate to in that period of time at the time of closure.
I do believe it's like a weighted time.
So that's, I think that's a prudent way to go about it. But as long as we have that projected cost and our service costs covered in there, I think that gives us a foundation to perform our rate study.
Something that I don't know if it relates to this, but to make you aware of it, if you remember the contaminants in the monitoring wells, it's tetrachloroethylene. The state has put us on quarterly monitoring for 1 year, starting now. We just did the samples. Before we were on every 6 months. The reason they did that is they want to get an average of that contaminant. And if that average is at or above the MCL, then things could change. We have to come up with a plan.
Which monitoring well are you the contaminants?
I believe it's 2. It's the one right off of Lackawanna, where the tires are.
Yeah, down below. And there's no way of knowing if it's coming from the landfill itself or from the old tailings at the.
At this point, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It's there. And if it stays at that level, we're going to have to do something about that.
And
What to do is
What's the-
be jailed.
what's the cost on the monthly monitoring?
Quarterly,
Or are we doing it monthly or quarterly?
Quarterly.
Okay, what's the
it's
cost?
about $1,200.
$1,200 a quarter, so just doubled our costs essentially, and $1,200 more.
And there are, at the EPA, there's all new faces there. And that's kind of what happened. The new people caught onto this and said, whoa.
Is that state environmental control or is it federal?
Bureau of Waste Management, Nevada Department of Environmental Protection. Just so you're aware of that.
Okay, thank you. And I know we've discussed this years ago, but right now we currently don't have a plan for doing like some closure every year in the spring, like planting grass or whatever.
We don't.
We'd have to run water lines and everything if we planted anything, I know. That might be something we might start considering too, as we close an area at the dump, start doing some rehabilitation and planting. And at least, won't be so much when it's all at once. Especially it might help keep the dust down. I know that's what the state, they did on that landfill down there on the highway down below Haifa.
All the trees.
Yeah, well, they planted alfalfa.
Yeah.
You have to run water lines, pretty expensive. Anyway, with that, I see here that we're charging now, the landfill rates is per household $13 a month. So what that is.
Yep.
Can we go through that, rate, not so much the rate structure, but we show 1403 to 1409. I'm not sure.
That's the codes in the system. I'm not sure why they have that. I had to look at it too, going, what is this? And I had to research that. Because how I want to do it, I want to put, residential, commercial.
Right. I was trying to figure out what the 1403 to 1409 represented. I see 1406 is motel campgrounds.
Oh, 1403, it's $4.90 to $22.50.
And what's that classification?
I can't find a classification for 2, 3, 4, 5, or 8.
Yeah.
Because you have the same rate code, 1403, that deals with 818, which is just a doubling of that previous one. And then again, a third more for the third tier of that. So it's tiered somehow.
Yeah. I think 1403 is customized, like customary. When I do remember, it was like 1403 or 1406. That was, you go in and you just type in the amount you want to do. That's what. Yeah.
So it's,
A generic.
It's fine.
Generic.
so it could be determined by, it's not a special rate that somebody can determine arbitrarily.
No, it's not.
I mean, I do really think maybe this first meeting might be just a fact finding discussion, okay, before we can really come up with a good formula.
I agree.
Okay, because I mean, we need to have all the figures, obviously, to do that. And Jennifer, if you figured out the way they come up with this, that's wonderful. I mean, that's part of this equation. I mean, looking at some of the older records that I have, okay, since I've been on the board, which I haven't dealt with this before, but I do have some questions that do concern me. Okay, and one of them was the funds for the closure of the landfill. I mean, do we have that adequately covered? And what that amount actually will be? Okay, if that is something that we need to correlate, maybe DJ, the city engineer, okay, to see what funds, $1 million is adequate. If that is not adequate, then we need to contribute equity to that. Okay, I think you'd reference that as a trust fund for the closure. Okay. The schedule fees, I'd like to go over these schedule fees and make sure that we understand which each one of them represent. You know, I do not see anywhere where it tells us what they represent. We have anywhere from 1401 to 1409. I like a classification of those. Okay, so that we actually know what we're talking about. Curiosity, government entities, how are they treated on the landfill? Does everybody pay a landfill fee? Does the White Pine County pay a landfill? Does the BLM,
Yes.
the post office, all of those pay that? Okay. So one of those classifications probably fall into that category, I would think.
I would think.
Okay. And it's my understanding too is just businesses that are attached to real property that are paid. Vacant land does not pay landfill.
Vacant land does not, yes, they do.
They do pay.
Yes, they do. As far as I know, they do. We got told they did. There is vacant lands out there that is being charged.
Just the base rate?
Yeah, $13.
$13, and that's billed through the
Through the
city or
owners.
through the county?
No, it's still through the city to
Through
the
the city.
homeowners.
All property billed. Okay. I needed to know that. I see in one of the proposals that we have for Pershing County, they exempt property that does not developed. So I was just curious on that.
And there was one too that goes through the property taxes.
Right.
It's also, I think it's.
And then also, I see that we're reimbursed from the county for billing to the county residents, 75 cents per bill.
Right.
That's correct. So I mean, that really should, I mean, in our fact-finding mission here, I mean, that there should be an income showing that. Okay, we're getting reimbursed from the county. Do we treat low income for emergency services
Nope.
differently?
Same price as everybody.
Yep.
And 1409 is this one page right here, and you know, basically addresses all the rules: the Ely State Prison, the honor camp, grocery stores, and I don't know if under grocery stores or convenience stores are underneath that too.
Yeah, it's
Convenience stores should
Base.
be under grocery stores.
because on the commercial buildings, the base is $4. So you start out with $4 and then
I have 1409 as home businesses.
Well, it's It's got a special hard code too, right there.
The second page.
Yeah. And I imagine that's what this is, it's a special hard code.
1409, yeah.
Yeah, this page here. But then also under 1407, we have per space trailer parks without office, and we have camping under 1409, which I don't know if that's, I can't remember if that was included the trailer parks or not.
Well, it should be, yeah, because they got camping motels in the same
Yeah.
rate structure, so.
I found out what the school part was. They have an agreement with White Pine County School District for the lunch program. And that's where that $1.51 comes in at.
That $1.51 is a factor of what?
Of how many lunches are provided for the school.
Okay. So district-wide, and then you just charge that. And when do they determine that number? Is there a specific day in the year, or is it by month, or?
I'm supposed to be getting it by the end of the school year, like June, July, like how many lunches on their lunch program they get. And it's separated. It's supposed to be separated with Baker McGill, Dave B. Norman, White Pine Middle School, White Pine High School.
Curiosity, Jennifer, how did you determine to come up with the 401 being the $13?
The $13, it was passed in 2009, but
I think there's going to be another rate increase coming on July 1st of this year too.
is there?
Yeah, I believe that's what it is.
Yeah, this was part of the $5 increase.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it was spread out over, okay, that includes the $5, because I think we did $2 the first year, and then $1 every year. I think this is the last year, maybe last year was the last year.
Well, there was also a resolution too where it was supposed to raise by $1, and the resolution says to lower it by $1.
They did that already.
And they did that already. That's for the
They
13.
did that
It was
already.
supposed to be 14, and it was 13 instead.
I mean, my question is, how do we come up with this rate? How do we come up with the $13? Did you figure that out? Is that just an arbitrary figure, or is it?
It was just a set figure that was.
What was hammered out, we took the total cost of the operation of the landfill originally, with so much budgeted for closure cost every year. And I think at the time, we tried to put $100,000 or $90,000 away for closure costs each other year. Then we come up with we worked backwards, I believe, if I remember correctly, from the bigger users, what's fair for them, backwards to the residential, and then it was decided that after the businesses and commercials and everybody paid their, like you see here, huge amounts. Then the rest of it was distributed between each home that was listed on the county assessor's office. That's how that figure was arrived at, to pay for operating costs and everything. So I believe we worked backwards.
We worked backwards.
Yeah, instead of just assessing the residentials first. And I think we had to have 2 or 3 public hearings on it before we even raised the rates to that amount.
Well, also on Bruce's email to me this morning, he said that he would like to request for the commercial landfill be 1 cent rate, which after researching all this, everybody doesn't have a set rate for commercials.
Yeah, they have a weight factor.
Yeah, they have a weight, yeah. And also he's requesting that we do something about, how those contractors come in from out of town, they get a business license, but there's no business legally here. They're just doing the work here.